Welcome to the English Epics channel. All my life I was what some people call a straight arrow. I believe that a man should speak the truth, keep his word, and live honestly. This includes the ability to forgive when necessary, but I never groveled before anyone. Tonight I threw all of that out the window. I would have lied and broken my word, and the only honor I would have cared about was the self-respect that comes with revenge. To hell with forgiveness. I was sitting in my car outside. That Nickel Inn. It's a bar in town. Don't ask me why it's called that. It's been here since the days when my father wore short pants and beer probably cost a penny. I knew Jeff would be inside. He always stopped here for a drink on his way home from work. I've known Jeff since elementary school. He was my best friend for as long as I can remember. He supported me when I married Barb, and I supported him when he married Claire. There wasn't a time when he wasn't part of my life. We were like brothers and practically lived in each other's homes growing up. In many ways, that didn't change even after we got married, and it was nothing unusual for them to drop by our house or for us to visit them unannounced. Betrayal changes a person. It hadn't even been 5 hours since I ran home during my lunch break to grab some files I had left there. Everything seemed fine. I entered through the front door and was heading to my office when I heard them. The first thought of a husband, my wife is in trouble. Can you imagine the struggle? Then I heard her voice and understood. Amid the grunting, there was laughter. I approached the open bedroom door, peeked inside, and all doubts disappeared. They didn't notice me. I'm not the type of person who would stand and watch as my wife and best friend betray me. So I just turned around and walked out through the front door the same way I had entered them while previous life was over. I didn't grab those files and only remembered them several hours later. At work, I was useless. I just sat there, replaying in my head what I had seen, asking questions no man should ever have to ask. Why? How long? Were there others? Are these even my children? I couldn't understand how I would be able to go back home or what I would do when I got there. Maybe I should just get in my car, drive, and not stop until I'm 1,000 miles away from here. Then my thoughts turned darker. I would divorce her and kill him. I would leave her with nothing. Then, over time, I thought about my children. I could live without my wife, but I couldn't deprive them of their mother. I decided that I had almost no choice left. I would deal with both of them in my own way and in my own time, but first, I would weave my web of lies, just as they had woven theirs. On the way to the Nickel Inn, I thought, how could two people I've known for so many years betray me like this? What's wrong with me? Did I change? Did they change? I knew I would wrestle with these questions for weeks and months, struggling with a terrible sense of inadequacy. I thought there are no answers to these questions because the only people who have the answers cannot be trusted to tell the truth. I felt truly lost and alone. The truth would be the first sacrifice made tonight. I wasn't pretending when I entered that Nickel Inn with a mask of anger and disappointment on my face. Jeff saw me as soon as I walked in and shouted, "John, over here, buddy." I thought to myself. I nodded, exhaled, and lowered my gaze so he wouldn't notice that my rage was directed at him. As I approached, I sat down at his table. Ralph was with him. Ralph, a co-worker of his. Everything turned out better than I had imagined. Just in time. John. I was about to order a glass, but now we can get a picture. Just a glass for me. I can't afford to be stopped tonight. Dude, you look like your dog just died. What's wrong with you? I don't have a dog, Jeff. You know that. Now that the kids are in school, it's just my wife and me alone. That's when it hit me, the empty nest syndrome. Could that be it? Could that be what made her betray me? So what's bothering you? Jeff seemed equally concerned about me and possibly about himself. That's the thing with cheaters. They always know they can get caught and are always worried about leaving evidence behind. She killed me, Jeff. She killed me. I'm dead, and all that's left is for me to collapse. What the hell are you talking about? Who killed you? You're not dead. You're sitting right here. Come on, John. Whatever it is, it can't be that bad. I looked him in the eye and said she infected me with AIDS, Jeff. Barb infected me with AIDS. They say a person's face turns pale when they're in shock and green when they're nauseated. We were miles away from the sea, but that day I saw nothing but green. My former best friend turned as green as a corpse, jumped up from the table, and ran to the men's restroom. He didn't make it. Whatever was in his stomach that night spread across the bar floor. Patrons ahead of him, behind him, to his left and to his right screamed in disgust and jumped out of their seats to get away from the mess and the stench. He was clearly not in his element. A sick drunk isn't the most popular person in a bar, and to the other patrons, that's exactly what he was. When the commotion settled down, I turned back to the table and looked at Ralph. He looked like he wanted to bolt. My wife is cheating on me. Not a bad way to find out, is it? Ralph just nodded. The only word that could describe his expression was fear. I wondered if he'd piece the puzzle together later. Eventually, Jeff pulled himself together as best he could. Returning to our table, he wasn't winning any popularity contests. All the way back, he drew stares and comments. He approached our table, looked down at me, and asked, "Are you sure?" "How do you know?" I wasn't feeling well, and the doctor ordered blood tests. The results came back today. Jeff simply nodded, turned, and walked out of the bar, message delivered. Ralph found a good excuse to leave within a minute, and I wondered who he would tell first. In any case, I was enjoying a cold beer, thinking about my next step. I briefly wondered what the people at the other tables thought of me as I sat there, quietly smiling to myself, savoring my beer. I delivered the message quietly enough that the nearby tables wouldn't understand what had come over Jeff or why Ralph had left so abruptly. It didn't matter. With an empty glass and a surprisingly steady pulse for a dead man, I paid the bill and headed to my car. I smirked on the way and thought, idiots, they stuck me with the check for everyone. No matter. It was a small price to pay for the satisfaction I felt. It was around 7 when I got home. Dinner was burnt and smoke was coming out of the oven. I turned it off and opened a window. I thought I knew where Barb might be, so I put on my darkest expression and went into the bedroom. I found her lying face down on the bed, sobbing and shaking. I thought to myself, message sent and received. In the most casual tone I could manage, I asked, "Having a bad day?" She screamed, and her screams grew louder. Take a wild guess who she was talking to. It was strange and satisfying to realize that Jeff was the only one, and it brought a smile to my face. Whatever had made her cheat on me, it seemed to be a recent and short-lived phenomenon. Soon my anger returned, and not long after that, my ashamed wife sat across from me and asked, "Can we talk?" "You talk. I'll listen." She wrung her hands and stared at the floor. "I did a terrible thing, I know that. I don't know if you'll ever forgive me, but I want you to know something. First, I'm so sorry. I don't know what came over me. Poor choice of words, I thought." She continued. "Second, it only happened twice, and both times with the same man. I know that doesn't justify anything, but I don't want you to think I've done this before." She lifted her head and looked me in the eyes. "Please, take a DNA test if you want, but never think the kids aren't yours. They are yours. I swear on everything holy. I've been a good wife for 25 years. I've never cheated on you. And then, in the past 2 months, I made a stupid mistake. Who was it? I damn well knew who it was, but they say confession is good for the soul. Please don't make me say it. Then I guess we're done." "No. Please. I've already heard you enough. I need a name." After a long silence, she said, "Fine, it was Jeff. My friend Jeff. Claire's husband Jeff." I tried to keep my voice calm. She just nodded. I decided to act like I was processing the new information. Maybe I could get her to explain. "Why did you do it?" Those were the only words I could get out at that moment. She shook her head. The first time, I drank too much. You weren't home and Jeff came over. He just knocked and walked in like always. We talked and he joked like he always does. We drank wine and I guess I had too much. It happened once, and that was it. I couldn't make him leave the house. I felt so ashamed. I cried all night. And then... She looked at me with such sadness and guilt as I had never seen before. Honestly, I don't know. Every time I saw Claire since it first happened, I felt so guilty. I couldn't live with it. But then the kids grew up, we both work, and I feel old. I know that's not an excuse, and I can't give you a reason to forgive me. I just want you to know that nothing like this ever happened before. It was only twice and only with Jeff. I know you hate me, but please believe me. I was faithful to you from our first date until 2 months ago. I had almost nothing to say. I listened, amazed, but I was inclined to believe her. 25 years of marriage had taught me how to spot a lie. At least I thought it had. Now I wasn't so sure. I need time to think. With those words, I went to sleep in the guest room. It wasn't much, but it was the biggest concession I was willing to make. As you can imagine, the next few days in our house were quiet, or they seemed quiet, but every now and then I threw in an angry word or two. Maybe it was just my imagination, but it felt like Barb was shrinking. That was all I could come up with. I wanted to hurt them both as much as possible, but I didn't know what to do next. Besides, I wanted revenge on Jeff, and so far all I had was his stunt in the bar. I had no idea. They say there's no honor among thieves, but Jeff surprised me in 2 ways. First, he really was cheating on Claire with several other women. Second, he did something noble and told them he might have exposed them to HIV. Or did Ralph put 2 and 2 together and spread the news? I'll probably never know. Either way, I didn't expect it. Neither did his wife when a parade of women knocked on her door wanting to harm Jeff. They didn't hold back in telling his wife everything. I would have thought Jeff might tell his wife before telling his girlfriends. But Jeff wasn't like that. Maybe he was working up the courage, or perhaps he was waiting to get tested first. It doesn't matter. By the next week, Jeff had moved into a hotel room and was looking for a cheap apartment. I didn't feel sorry for him. Around this time, it hit me. I thought back to last week's bloody mess, and it occurred to me. Damn, I probably should get a real test. It turned out the test was negative, and I began to think I dodged a bullet. It became clear to me that I hadn't thought everything through. This fact became obvious about a week after I had verbally punched Jeff in the gut with my HIV story. When my wife took a test and it came back negative, yet she still thought my result was positive, her shame and guilt evaporated almost instantly. One afternoon, Barb burst into my office, spewing curses that would have made even a Marine blush. She slammed the office door shut behind her and launched herself at me. Waving the test results in my face, she screamed, "Who the hell is she? You're making me feel lower than dirt, and all this time you've been cheating on me behind my back. Who the hell is she?" "You. When I'm done with you, HIV will be the least of your problems," she yelled for a good 2 minutes before finally running out of steam. After that, she collapsed into a chair and broke down into uncontrollable sobs. Well, if I wanted revenge, it seemed I had achieved it. Now it was time to fish or cut bait. I walked around my desk, knelt down, and hugged her. She shoved me away sharply, but kept crying, so I hugged her again, and this time she leaned into me. "What do we do, John? We've messed everything up." I took a deep breath and said, "We'll cry it out, pull ourselves together and go home. Then we'll get back to normal life. It's going to take a lot of effort, and it starts with a word that begins with F. Oh, John, we can't have sex right now. You have HIV. The word I meant is forgiveness, and it starts with us forgiving each other. I forgive you, John. But our life together is ruined." She sobbed as she said it. "No, it's not. Barb, look at me. I forgive you for your affair, and you need to forgive me for lying to you." Now she looked less angry and more confused. We've both lied to each other, John. That's what betrayal is. No, Barb, I lied to you about having HIV. I don't. That day I came home and saw you with Jeff. I was so furious that I ran out of the house and started planning revenge. I decided to tell Jeff that you had infected me with HIV, knowing it would scare him to death. Honestly, I didn't think much further than that. After that, I was just reacting to what was happening. Barb's face slowly shifted through emotions as she processed the new information. To be honest, I had no idea what would happen next, but she surprised me. Her entire tone changed. Instead of anger, there was concern. Her voice became quiet, as if the anger and pain had faded as she thought things through. So, you're not sick? No. And you're not going to die? No. You scared me to death, John. You hurt me pretty damn badly, Barb. She thought about it for a moment longer. And you've never cheated on me with some other woman? No, Barb, I would never cheat on you. I guess that makes me the only cheater in the family, she said, looking defeated. We're quite the pair, aren't we, John? I suppose we're. Do you think we should try again? For the first time since she entered my office, she smiled. Yes, John. All right. How about I grab my briefcase and we head home early? Yes, John. We held hands as we walked through the halls of my office and out of the building. In that moment, I felt a strange sense of pride in this woman. She had betrayed me with my best friend. Yet she still felt guilt and shame and had paid the price for looking in the mirror and not liking what she saw. I was full of optimism and believed that we could rebuild our marriage and make it stronger. I'm still angry with you, John. I know. The feeling is mutual. We were furious, but there were tears in our eyes, too. Only time would tell if we had the strength and determination to forgive each other. I was confident we did. Forgiveness cannot be earned. It can only be granted. Rebuilding trust is even harder. It's a constant struggle. Nevertheless, we came to terms with the reality of our actions, took responsibility, and worked to heal each other. Barb quickly acknowledged that she understood my actions and held no resentment toward me. I never reached the same point with her, but I recognized that we're all human and make mistakes we deeply regret. One more act of forgiveness was required, and it brought me to Claire's front door. My actions against Jeff had caused her immense fear, as she assumed she might also have HIV. I apologized for not telling her sooner so she wouldn't worry. I had to admit that, in my anger and pain, I never considered her. In one difficult conversation, she went from anger to forgiveness and even genuine amusement, laughing at my personal revenge against her soon-to-be ex-husband. She and Barb never managed to repair their relationship, which I think was a great loss for both of them. I saw no reason to forgive Jeff. He was a predator we had let into our lives, and we were better off without him. That I never told him that I was clean or that Barb didn't have HIV, and I saw no point in doing so. Ralph did his job better than I expected. To her great embarrassment, Barb had to explain over and over that the rumors about her illness were greatly exaggerated, that she didn't have HIV, and that we were still together. It seemed that none of the people Ralph had told bothered to inform Jeff about it. Thank you for listening until the end. See you in the next episode of English Epics. Take care of yourself and your loved ones. Goodbye.